Hello everyone and welcome on board Pedagogue. My name is Tova and I'm gonna be your guide here today. At the back of the boat we also have our captain, Gustav. You can wave to him. We do have some rules on board this boat. First of all, we sit down and we sit down at all times. That means no standing up and that means no switching seats. You are all now sat. We're gonna go under some bridges. Don't touch them, you can get hurt. Keep arms, legs and other loose body parts inside of the boat at all times. In case we need life jackets, they are found under our seats if we just tilt them forwards. The city of Gothenburg was founded back in 1621 by our then king, King Gustav II Adolfo. At that time we were unfortunately not very good friends with our neighbors in Norway and Denmark, so to protect our beautiful city we dug out this moat that we're currently riding in, and we also built a 7-meter tall city wall all around the city. In the earlier 1800s, we were better friends with our neighbors, so we tore down the 7-meter tall city wall. And when we did that, we had some space for a big new street. This one right here is called the Big New Street. When we built the Big New Street in the 1850s, it needed to be fast and effective, so we started building it from both ends at a time. And then we reached the middle of the street and we had a problem. We had space for 2 houses, but there was only 1 house number left. Our creative solution is seen on this red door here to your left. What you can see on that red door is of course the street number 17 and a half, and that is the only and a half number in Sweden today. When we dug out this moat in the 1600s, we took all of the mud, we threw it to the side and we hoped for the best. And it went really great because in the 1800s we had really rich soil over here on our right side. So in the 1840s we started the Garden Society here, inspired by the botanical gardens in Berlin and Greifswald. Up ahead on our right side here we have a brown house with a grey roof. This is today the Alphonse Culture House. But when this house was built back in the 1880s, it was actually a seed store. Since then it's gone through a lot of renovations. However, the seed storage in this house is still original to this day. We're about to go under the lock bridge. After the lock bridge, we're making a 90-degree turn to the left. So and also don't lean out of the boat. Thank you. So that water lock was built back in 1873 and it was used up until just last year by us Pedagogue guides. This year it's undergoing some renovations, but hopefully we can use it again next year. Up on your right side here we have something called the Queen's Square. Back in the day we sold a lot of things here, including a lot of wood, and that's where we got the nickname the Wood Square. Today, however, the Queen's Square is one of the biggest tram stops we have here in Gothenburg. The trams that you can see here in Gothenburg are pretty unique to Gothenburg, at least compared to many other Swedish cities. We got our first trams in the late 1800s, and back then they were horse-powered. It wasn't until about 20 years later, in the early 1900s, that they became electric. The reason that we have trams here in Gothenburg is because the city is built on mud, so it would have been far too unstable to make an underground railroad system. We're about to go through the Brooms Park. In the Brooms Park we have a lot of bridges, so please be extra careful. We have the Brooms Park. Brunn is a Swedish word that means well, so it's a well park because back in the day there was a well here that people could use and get their water from. The statue to your right here is a statue of King Gustav II Adolfo. According to the legend, he stood up on a mountain called Otterhälla. He was overlooking this beautiful swamp when he made that same exact pose and said, "This is where the city shall be." And here we are, a little bit more than 400 years later. Up on your right side here, we have a church. This is the German church. We hired a lot of Germans in the early 1600s to help us build our city. In 1648, they got their own church here in Gothenburg. That church unfortunately burned down a few times, but the church that's standing here today, it has been here ever since 1748. The building to your right here with the green roof, this is today the Gothenburg City Museum. But before this was a museum, it was the headquarters of a company that's called the East India Company. Founded in the year 1733, that was the first Swedish international trading company. They brought home luxury goods like silks, porcelains, and teas all the way from Asia. The buildings up ahead on your left side here, the one on the far corner with the flag on the roof. That one is called the Residence. It was built back in 1651. It is the oldest building in Gothenburg where people have actually lived. If there would have been a Swedish flag on top, that means that the Swedish royal family are there, because this is where they live when they come and visit Gothenburg. We're about to go under two bridges. The second bridge is the lowest bridge of the entire tour, so please duck down a little bit extra. Under the second bridge, if you're careful, you can look up into the left of the ceiling and see a sculpture there. That sculpture is a good clue as to what the bridge is named. This bridge is called the Cheese Slicer. Welcome to Göta älv. This is the longest river in all of Sweden. If you travel a couple of hours in that direction, you reach the ocean. And if you travel a couple of days in the other direction, then you reach our capital city, Stockholm. The boats up ahead on your right side here, they are part of the biggest floating time museum. Early 2000s, we got a visit from an American president with the name George Bush. He and his colleagues was a bit unsafe to keep real missiles on a boat like this, so the ones we see here today are unfortunately not real. Okay. Up ahead here, you have a tall building that is red and white. In the 80s, our politicians decided that we needed a new landmark here in Sweden, or Gothenburg to be specific. So, much like Paris got the Eiffel Tower, in 1989, Gothenburg got the lipstick. No less than 7 times has it won the prestigious award for being Sweden's ugliest building. We are so proud. The building to your right here is the Gothenburg Opera. It was done in 1994 and is today Gothenburg's main stage. This big white sailship here in front of the lipstick, her name is Barken Viking, and she was made in 1906 in Copenhagen, Denmark. She was a Danish school ship and took several trips to Australia. A trip that back in the day took closer to 2 years to complete. Unfortunately though, in the 50s, she was wasting away in Rotterdam, so we bought her, we brought her home here to Gothenburg, we have restored her, and today she's a hotel and a restaurant. On your right side here, we have the free port. It's called the free port because back in the day, ships could come in here and unload all of their goods freely. Usually you have customs that board the boat, but in this case you had customs when you left the port on land instead. So in that sense they had created a free port. So on our right side here, sticking out from the free port, we have the banana pier. It is not called the banana pier because it's shaped like one, but because this is where all the banana boats used to arrive. They would park along this pier and unload all of the bananas going to Sweden. And that happens to be a lot of bananas because Swedes eat the most amount of bananas in the world. More than 20 kilos per person per year. If you see that big ball on top of the old navigation school back in the day, that ball would rise up and then fall down at exactly 1 p.m. every day. That was so that all the captains in the harbor could see it and they could set their clocks to the right time before heading back out to sea. Gothenburg is an old shipbuilding city. We had 3 main shipyards. Those were Götaverken, Lindholmen and Eriksberg. Unfortunately, after the 70s, it became too expensive to make boats here in Sweden, so they all had to close. But these cranes right here, up ahead on your right side, they were part of Götaverken, and they managed to stay open all the way until 2015. To your left here, you can see some apartment buildings. There's a green one on the right side of them that is slightly taller than the others. Built in the 1930s, that is actually Gothenburg's very first skyscraper. All of 17 floors tall. We've gotten better at this skyscraper thing here in Gothenburg. And to your right, behind these cranes, they're building a tall grey tower. That is the Carla Tower they are building. When it's done, it's going to be the tallest building in Scandinavia. It's already the tallest building in Gothenburg, actually. They have built about 50 floors, and they're going to build about 20 more. And they were expected to be done by April 2021. So, any day now, I suppose. And on the right side here, one kind artist donated some sculptures. Unfortunately, though, nobody knows what they are depicting. So if you look on the other side of the river, up to your left, up on the mountain there is a church. And that church is the Masthugg's Church and was opened in October of 1914. So the Masthugg's Church is located on top of a mountain. So you have a really beautiful view from it. You see many different parts of town. And you also see the church really well from different parts of town. So back in the day, there were rumors going around that the basement of the Masthugg's Church was filled with dynamite. So if enemies ever came, you could blow up the entire church to warn everybody. Such a great plan. These white and blue boats here, they are called river quickies. I did not make that up. But these river quickies, they are part of our public transportation here in Gothenburg. So right now we're heading straight towards the Denmark's terminal. This is where you go if you want to take a boat between Gothenburg and Denmark. Usually there's big boats in here. They're not here right now, unfortunately. But these boats are usually here are called Stena Line boats. Stena Line is a company that was founded in 1939 by a Swedish man whose name was Sten Allan Olsson. So this boat right here, her name is Stena Charisma. She is always in here because we don't use her anymore. But when we used her, she took us from Gothenburg to Denmark in only 120 minutes. That's half the time that it usually takes. And she could be so fast because she's a catamaran, so she has 2 hulls instead of 1. Unfortunately, she also had really high fuel costs, so it became too expensive to keep up in the long run. Right now, she is actually for sale, so if you're looking for a big boat with high fuel costs, maybe she's something for you. Once you get past Charisma here, you can, if you want to, look back and see the 2 hulls that she has. And how it's possible to drive under the entire boat if you'd like to. We call it our personal parking garage on rainy days. Så riktigt häftigt. Tycker det är lika coolt varje gång jag ser det. So this big brown building here, it says Hotel Draken on top. Draken is a Swedish word that means dragon, but Draken is also a really old movie theater here in Gothenburg that was built in the 50s. A big part of the Gothenburg Film Festival. But this entire hotel has been built on top of the already existing movie theater, Draken. So this big blue building up ahead here is owned by Gothenburg Energy, and it produces electricity. And when they built it, they realized it was quite big, so they wanted to create an illusion. They painted the entire building blue to make it blend in with the sky. So up ahead on our right side here, we're gonna drive right past it. This big yellow house here is called the Warehouse and was built back in 1921. Before these low bridges were in town, you could come right in through here and park next to the warehouse. Once the ships were here, they could load all of their goods straight into the warehouse through that big red door there on the side. After this bridge, if you look to your left, then you can see the remains of the 7-meter tall city wall. So back in the day, we had a wall like that surrounding the entire city. So they said they built the city wall 7 meters tall for a reason. And that reason was that the tallest mountain in Denmark was only 6 meters tall, so then they couldn't climb over it. The place up to your left here has long been used for selling fish, cold in the winters and smelly in the summers. So in 1874 we got the Fish Church. They actually have their very own slogan, "In cod we trust." If you remember from the beginning of the tours that we can't have an underground railroad system that is very unstable when your city is built on mud. Anyways, if you're wondering what the building right here, that's an underground railroad system. Don't ask me how that works, I don't know. But it's supposed to be able to take us from the inner city of Gothenburg out to other parts of the county, such as the Landvetter Airport. Behind this construction we have a beautiful city park, and it's called Haga, lovely wooden houses built in the 1880s. And in Haga they also have a lot of cafes, and in those cafes you can find the very famous Haga Bulle. Now the Haga Bulle, it's a cinnamon bun, but it's about the size of my head, if not even bigger. Very delicious. It's a really good place if you want to try out a traditional Swedish fika. Now fika is a big part of our culture here. It's where we sit down and we drink coffee and eat pastries. To your right here we have the King's Park, built in the 1850s. Now this is actually a 2-kilometer long tree library. All the trees found in Scandinavia are supposed to be represented within this park right here. This type of bridge is called a swinging bridge because back in the day when ships had to pass through, you would swing open the entire bridge, turn it on these wheels here in the middle. Up to your left here we have one of my favorite buildings in Gothenburg. It's called the Pedagogue, built in the 1850s. It was supposed to become a hospital. And why do you want to build a round hospital? Well, because back in the day they believed that illnesses would hide in the corners. So they got rid of all the corners to get rid of all the illnesses. It, however, unfortunately did not work. Expensive to make a round building. If you look to your left after the bridge, you can see exactly where they ran out of money. I like to imagine that they put all the patients who they didn't like in the square part of the building. Up to your left here, where these green trees are, we have the King's Square. Always been selling a lot of daily goods here. And in 1889 we also got the Salehall here, a big building with a round blue-grey roof. And the Salehall is a place where we still today sell daily goods at the King's Square. The sculpture up ahead on your left side here is Prometheus from the Greek mythology. It was said that he stole the fire from the gods because it contained a knowledge he wanted to give to the regular people. As a punishment, he got a pyramid as a head. Only person I have ever seen who has both a bare belly and a six-pack. Very impressive. So the Great Theatre was built back in the 1880s, and that was actually Gothenburg's main stage up until 1994 when the Gothenburg Opera took over. We are right now approaching the end of the tour. Please remain seated until I say it's okay to stand up. All life jackets can be left on the seats and I will grab them later. You may also please leave a review at either TripAdvisor, Facebook or Google. My name is Tova and campus name is Gustav. Tack så mycket. Thank you very much.
Tack så mycket.